You know, Patriot Mobile stands for faith, family, and freedom. But did you know they have cutting-edge technology as well? Switching is easy. No store visits, no hassle. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% US-based service team can activate you in minutes. Enjoy exceptional coverage with access to all 3 major US networks, even add a backup line to your phone. Get unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, and more. Go to patriotmobile.com/Kirk25 or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Kirk25 for a free month of service.
All right, Charlie. So I ran for state senate because our government doesn't work well. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of bloat. And yet the things that you're advocating about going against are what help people. Everybody's here because they support freedom. Because as you say, we want a freer market, we want a freer place. And yet these policies like destroying the Department of Education, which I'm a teacher for, hurts our ability to take power in the marketplace. It just adds to the few rich people owning all of us. Right now in America, the top 0.01% have an average $600 million of wealth. The bottom half have an average $7,000. And by destroying the Department of Education, the Center for Budget, the Consumer Protection Bureau, that is actively helping those rich people take all of our money. Prove me wrong.
Okay, so Trump's been president for 6 weeks.
Sure.
Right. So we had an oligarchy as Donald Trump was becoming president.
Yes.
We had all these agencies. How did they prevent the oligarchy?
They didn't. No, we have a bad oligarchy, but Trump is increasing our oligarchy. He had Jeff Bezos. He had Tim Cook. He had the richest people on the earth who have more money than the bottom half of the country combined sitting right behind him.
Hold on a second.
And Elon Musk is helping those regulations get destroyed so they can take even more power.
As an attendee. But let's go through one by one.
And they donated to it.
So let's go one by one.
Sure.
Let's first go the Department of Education. So the Department of Education, which I'm guessing you're in favor of like $47 million going to improving learning outcomes in Asia?
Yeah.
Okay,
because helping other people helps us. I'm a teacher. When other people don't match our economy, when they can't participate in it, everybody's hurt by that.
So I do have a question, though. We're not even helping ourselves. Why should we help other countries?
So you're right. We should help ours. You're right. We should help ourselves more. And that means funding the Department of Education, funding healthcare.
Let me finish.
Go.
How does one help oneself? Have educational outcomes gotten better or worse since the creation of the Department of Education?
The bloated Department of Education, you are right. We're spending way too much money on administration. That money needs to be go to funding school meals. That needs to be reducing class sizes.
You sound like a Doge advocate, man.
No, because Doge is not doing that. By destroying the Department of Education, they're not funding Title I classrooms. If we funded Title I classrooms with the money that we promised, every single classroom would get a paraprofessional, which would help my students immensely. So they are failing. And as you're saying before, that Florida is the most equitable state. It's not. The richest students get $2,000 more to their schools every year than the fourth quartile students.
So I am curious, though, that the Department of Education, we've seen standards go down. They want to send it back to the states. By definition, we have the Department of Education. 11 million people are in education like yourself. 11 million of them. 6.7 million are administrators. 6.7 million are administrators. Can we agree we should fire most of those administrators?
It would. Look, I can't say that because I don't know what those administrators do. I think we have way too much money going to them.
You're a teacher. Time out. I got to interrupt you. Are you a teacher?
Yeah.
What do the administrators in your school do?
They help us out a lot. I mean, do you think I could manage my classroom if I didn't
absolutely.
You are wrong.
No,
I could not manage my classroom unless I had an administration helping me out.
You need 5 administrators for your 1 teacher. That's the ratio.
That's bad. You're right. That's bad.
Okay, but that's the current ratio. So 5 to 1. But secondly, let me ask you, this is a very important
point. It should be reduced, but destroying the Department of Education is not the answer, because then you hurt the American economy by not allowing people to build up their human capital.
Time out. We already have the evidence. From the advent of Department of Education, we are now 26 in education. We were top 5 when it started. We're the lowest in reading, math, arithmetic in the Western world. Department of Education has made our standards substandard, and we spend $250 billion a year on the Department of Education, and yet our kids we can't find a single kid that can read at grade level in a Baltimore public school or that can do math in a Chicago public school. And yet we keep on spending billions of dollars on it. So maybe the solution is crush the current system, Send the money back to the states. Empower families and parents, moms and dads to spend the money as they see fit. More choice, more competition, and make it localized, not federalized.
So here's the problem. The state of Florida introduced a bill. My opponent introduced a bill to provide $7,000 for school choice in Florida. That's government waste. A lot of that money is going to Disney, to cruises. That's increased waste. It's also every dollar that's taken out of the Florida public education system given to private families. 75% of that is going to families.
You're against school choice?
75%. I'm not against school choice as long as we fund education properly, but 75% of the money is going to families that can already afford education, which means my students are getting $3 billion taken out of their education to go directly to the richest Floridians.
Hold on, I just want to make sure I understand. So you're against the money going to homeschooling? Like, what do you mean by this Disney thing? You're talking way too fast.
So we need money going to where it's needed. To school meals.
What is your critique? You're saying $3 billion going to what? I'm not.
So $3 billion is being taken out of the public education system
and going
given
where?
directly to the people who can
For
already
what?
afford a private education.
For what reason?
To help people get their private education.
Okay,
The problem
got
is there
it.
also weren't
I know
restrictions
what you're saying.
on that to
Got
limit
it.
what the
No,
private
I
schools
understand
could
what
raise their tuition by.
You're totally wrong. I got what you're saying. What
How?
you're saying, though, well, it's because
Show me the facts.
It's their taxpayer dollars that are coming back as a refund, right?
It's also the public taxpayer
Hold on,
dollars that
it's
put into
theirs.
public money and they were given back to private individuals rather than going to the public system.
It's their
no,
own
because you're
money that's
advocating
coming
for the rich
back.
people stealing our tax dollars.
Hold on, it's easy to say like the rich people.
Yeah.
Right?
The 75% of the money that's
How,
going to
how
private
do you
education.
define rich, by the way? How much money a
if you
year
can
is rich?
afford a private education, which is anywhere from $15,000 to $40,000 a year, you are rich. And 75% of the money going to the private and 75% of the money go. Half of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. If you can afford $40,000, you're richer than most people. Now, 75%. 75% of the money that is going from the public education system into the private system is going to those who can already afford private education.
What is the number one predictor of student success?
How many years a teacher has been an educator?
Yeah, actually, the quality of this teacher.
Yeah.
So, can we agree at least, because we'll not agree on everything, that we should be able to fire teachers at will?
At will is what do you mean at will? For what cause?
If you're a bad teacher.
What do you mean by bad teacher?
I mean, you're on the
No,
line.
what do you mean by
know,
bad teacher?
Yeah, someone who doesn't listen to their students, is not good at what they do, graded by other teachers.
For cause, not at will. Yes, we should fire teachers for cause.
Okay, but I think that do we have too many teachers or not enough teachers?
In Hillsborough County alone, we're missing 1,200. Across the state of Florida, across the state of Florida, there are 5,000 teachers. That's 50,000 students without an educator. You asked me a question. Let me finish.
We need better, higher paid teachers.
Yes, absolutely. And Florida has the 48th lowest average teacher pay.
Why do you think that is?
Because we have a Republican-controlled state for the past 30 years that are increasingly taking away money for teachers.
But hold on. If I'm not mistaken, Florida is in the top 5, if not the number 1, on educational outcomes for students, right?
On them passing, not actual outcomes. On them passing.
So that's number 1 in the country, I think, though, right? And it was like number 30 or 40 back before school choice was. So I'm just curious at your complaint here. But it's fine. Let's just kind of go back to the thing. We'll go to the next question. Sure. The Department of Education, why should the federal government have any role in education?
Because spending that money on helping people helps the entire
economy.
No, wait,
that's not where the money's going.
Let me finish. Helping people helps the entire economy.
How has that worked?
When you let people fall through the cracks, it destroys our economy. It's more expensive. When you take away the Consumer Protections Bureau that helps $16 billion of scams go back to the American people, that helps our economy because then they can take place in the marketplace. What you're advocating for is to reduce the things that push people into the marketplace, to increase the barriers, and to destroy the freedom of our marketplace.
Again, you have not answered the question. Let's just reiterate it. Department of Education.
That answer because it helps people.
Got started in
and helps the economy as a whole.
1979.
That wasn't the question.
The same sort of nice sounding stuff we started to do over the last 35, 40 years. And we have the lowest standards ever had. We have childhood poverty all over the place. We have broken public schools because spending money from D.C. does not solve the problem. Empowering parents does.
So
parental agency is the solution, not bureaucratic empowerment.
Spending money on spending. The federal
Got to get to the next one.
1 second. The federal government spending money based solely on tests hurts people. Because then we don't get the money going to critical thinking, which your misinformation machine succeeds on. Because when people can't critically think, they accept your assertions as reality.
So, last question. Hold on. So, you would say I'm a misinformation machine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Fine. You're a teacher.
Yes.
What is a woman?
What is a woman? Oh, buddy. All right. So, we define gender as a set of preferences that you have. Gender is a set of preferences we have. Woman is a social construct that we've agreed upon. Typically, we imagine womanhood as makeup or whatever. There is a difference between the word woman and being a biological female. Woman is a social construct that we use. Listen for a second. I'm telling you what it means. Woman is a social construct. We agree on these set of preferences. If I tell you that I'm a man, it's because I want you to know that I like these set of preferences. If I tell you I'm a woman, it's because I want you to know that I agree with these set of preferences.
Can men give birth?
Can men or can males? Because males can't. Listen for a second. If you listen to your bio professors, you would understand there's a difference between biology and what we think
So
about.
I want to thank you for proving a great point.
What?
You are why we should eliminate the Department of Education. Thank you very much. Yes.
How do you get to that classy so I can jump in front of him? Yes. Hey, nice to meet you, Charlie. I'll tell you what, wearing a blazer was a wrong decision today. Man, I am hot.
We are in the swamp, right?
Yeah, right. I'm actually an instructor in history. I teach at the college level, and I have a lot of my coverage. My main area is World War I and World War II. And I really hate it when I'm teaching those classes and then we have a political discussion and students immediately go to the fascistic, kind of like Hitler comparison. But that's my question that I have for you. At what point do you see the development of what's happening currently right now to Trump's rise to power, his progression to getting his second term, compared to Weimar Germany during the in-war period? Because there's a lot of correlations there, and this isn't propaganda. I can give you list after list after list from an objective point of view, because I'm sure you consider yourself to be an historian. Like I've seen you in videos before doing very well interacting with the literature, and if that's the case in history, if you're asking a question, testing a theory, or filling in a gap, asking that question shouldn't be as controversial as it should be, especially if you're looking from objective means.
Okay, fair question. Do you also, and I will answer the question, but do you also correlate President Trump's rise to second power to Winston Churchill's?
No, I wouldn't.
But they have way more in common than the Weimar Germany one. And you're a historian professor, you know
Okay.
that, right?
Oh.
Well, think about it. Donald Trump was put in exile, so was Churchill after the Darnells. You know about the Darnells because you're a professor, right? You do? Okay. Can you tell me about the Darnells?
I would rather focus primarily on.
If you're a World War I professor and you don't know about the Darnells? Okay.
why
Anyway,
don't I
no, but this is important because everyone says, this is what you're paying for, everybody. Because it's interesting. They say, well, the similarities between Weimar Germany and Trump, okay, but Churchill and Trump had a lot of similarities in their rise to power. So did Thatcher and Trump. The point being is there's a lot of European examples you can point to. However, I will concretely answer the question. Okay. They have huge things that they disagree on and that there were big differences. Was Hitler pro-free speech or anti-free speech?
He wasn't necessarily pro-free speech, especially when it got towards the end of the Weimar Republic.
Yeah, I mean, he would imprison journalists and, put his political opponents in jail. And so I guess the question is, has Donald Trump been pro-free speech or anti-free speech?
If I can give you some comparisons that I would necessarily see. I mean, if you look at, you have a populist movement, right? You have someone who has a cult of personality, a very effective rhetoric. If you look at the assassination attempts that were on Hitler and on Trump, if you look at even the iconography that you have within the MAGA hats, you have a white lettering on a red background. If you even go even further.
Oh, I got another one you forgot. Yeah. Did you know that Hitler had a dog?
Okay. No. So the very nature of history is seeing a level of comparison of analysis. Once again, I'm not.
Oh my goodness! Hitler was also a vegetarian, so vegetarians are also likely to kill their whole population.
If I could give you another example, and because after my question, I would like to ask
this is such a sloppy analysis, and you know it.
No, because I'm trying to step piece at a time to ask you, because the question isn't a definitive. You're trying to build an argument, which is the very nature of it. And to sit down and observe and ask these questions, because it tends to get to the right that there's this accusation that certain comparisons aren't allowed on the left. And so I'm asking you, like, in a high level of integrity, do you see these comparisons? Not to call Trump Hitler. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to ask is, if you're sitting down paying attention, at what point would you say maybe you're starting to exceed the level of someone who's trying to act as a liberator to getting to the point of the despot?
Well, first of all, I think the entire premise is wrong. You cannot draw a linear connection with every figure of history to the moment of time. That, first of all, that's just an incredibly sloppy way of looking at things, because then everything becomes Nazi Germany and everything is Hitlerian. For example, people are like, oh, Joe Biden is acting like Hitler, which, by the way, he acted far more as an autocrat than Donald Trump ever would, locking his political opponents in jail. 1 second. Instead, you have to look at every moment in time, its own context, and its own perspective. And I would say there's a lot more depth and richness of history than just what happened during the horrors of World War II. As I mentioned, Churchill's rise to power, Thatcher's rise to power, the Elizabethan period. I think that Donald Trump is much more like Justinian's reign or Marcus Aurelius than anything that you could connect to Donald Trump, connect to Adolf Hitler. But at what point, that's a hypothetical, and I refuse to answer hypotheticals, but I would have to throw it back at you.
It's not a hypothetical, it's a factual comparison.
No, you asked a hypothetical. You asked me, hypothetically, at what point would I draw a line? That is a hypothetical by definition, Professor.
Well, a progression towards a conclusion of the evidence that's presented.
But I reject answering hypotheticals.
I'm trying to bring up the factual information in order to get to a conclusion.
Instead, allow me to have you answer a very specific question.
Okay.
Would you agree that there are creeping similarities between the Democrat Party's seizure against free speech, their criminalization of political opponents, to communist totalitarian dictatorships of the 20th century? Two people can play this game.
I would make a comparison to the Biden's presidency as the old regime that fell apart before you had the rise of the populist figure that was there. I would shift this slightly to get away from the comparison to Hitler. Could you compare America currently right now to the interwar period Weimar Republic, where you had hyperinflation, devaluation of the fiat money, you had people who were suffering when it came to the purchasing power of their labor. It got to the point that even Germany, Berlin, was the center of decadence and degeneration. Those conversations are being had right now. So I would even make the argument, if you want to get away from the trigger word of Hitler, that the economic, social, and cultural environment the Weimar Republic had is very akin to what's happening right now.
I think it's more similar to 1980 America. We had a terrible, inept president by the name of Jimmy Carter or Joe Biden that slept-walk America into weakness and wokeness, and a figure like Ronald Reagan or Donald Trump revitalized our country. I don't have to look to the Weimar Republic. We have 1980 to point to. That's a way better example than. And by the way, there's like 15 things wrong with your argument. Number one, Adolf Hitler
It's not
ran.
an argument; it's a question.
It sounds like an argument, but fine.
You're constructing it into an argument.
The embedded argument within your question is what's wrong with your contention.
The question was: is there comparable nature to now in Weimar Germany? I'll make one more thing that will change.
Sparingly and
I would remove
very
from the
weak
1980s. If I could shift it from the 1980s, why it's not the same because of similarities.
Can I answer the differences? Because the similarities are one
I
thing.
want to give you one more difference. One more similarity between interwar period and now. When it came to Hitler's rise in power, you had the first constitutional republic in Weimar Germany, in which he later superseded with certain racial laws, certain citizen laws. There was a creation of an identifiable other in order to consolidate and coagulate the populist movement. Okay? Is that not happening right now with the same narrative that's happening with illegal immigrants?
Well, no, because it's not based on any race. It's whether or not you came into the country correctly and legally.
No, there were citizenship laws. There were the Reich citizenship laws in which they defined what a citizen was and what was not allowed to be part of the German population, which was constitutionally committed.
Got it. So just to be clear, when Bill Clinton deported a bunch of people, he was also kind of acting similar to the interwar period.
We're going towards the national narrative right now. Right now, there's no question that.
No, but let me go at length a little bit. This is such a sloppy argument for many reasons.
I'm not making an argument. I'm making a comparison.
It's such a sloppy comparison for many reasons.
How is it a sloppy comparison?
Because there's so many differences. Can I name some of the differences?
History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. There's going to be similarities to it, not the exact same.
Well, but no,
and my question to you was
differences
simply,
are
do you
distinct.
not recognize the similarities?
I reject so many of your core premises, largely because if you have any political leader in the West, you could start to try to connect dots of what happened in the 1930s and 40s and then say, well, this is very similar to the interwar period, and this guy's a
That's
populist.
history. That's the study of history. That's how you get a monograph published. Because what happens is I'm
hold
asking
on.
you for a comparison.
Allow me to. Can I
no,
keep on
because
going?
you're going on a divagation. I'm asking about currently, right now, America and compared to Weimar Republic, and then you bring in other decades that I haven't even asked about.
Because to answer your question, I think the similarities are so weak and pale, such as saying, well, Hitler was a.
Pale?
Yes, saying like Hitler was a vegetarian, Hitler had a dog. But I would say the similarities between Trump's rise to power is much more like Churchill, Thatcher, and Reagan.
Is there a similar populist movement? Yes or no?
No different than William Jennings Bryan or Teddy Roosevelt.
Sure.
I say Trump is more like Teddy Roosevelt than anything that happened in the
That's
interwar
fine.
period.
You can make
or Trump
those
was more
arguments.
like
That's
Alexander Hamilton. That is my argument.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there an economic decline happening right now in America? Is there a promise for economic prosperity? Is there this promise
now
that every
there is,
despot makes that they need power in order to help humanity, but then they end up using it? I mean, there's been, who was it, Anthony Ogle, one of the congressmen that threw the idea of changing the Constitution to have a third term?
Well,
I mean, doesn't that concern you for a second?
Allow me to, but just, what kind of despot is Donald Trump? How many?
Not yet.
Hold
the
on.
question is the reason why you
I
observe
got
to that
5
point.
words in. You shouldn't do this to your kids in class, by the way. You should let them get
Ask
their arguments
questions?
out. No,
Ask questions.
Interrupt them. Interrupt them if they're
Because
paying
you're
you to
not
be
answering
here.
my
Okay.
question.
But allow me to finish my argument, if I can, which is without interruption. Which is this, which is that if President Trump was really a despot, you want to interrupt me so bad.
I'm holding back for you. I'm trying to be considerate.
Or was going to be a despot, what kind of a despot allows his opponents to criticize him, allows open and robust free speech, and allows the continuation of the true fulfillment of liberal democracy? What kind of a despot does that?
It gets to the core of my first question. At what point does it go from liberator to despotism? That's my question. And the whole point of making the comparison is to provide that critical lens of interpretation of at what point would you go from celebrating Trump to being concerned that it's going too far. Can I give you a scenario which kind of solidifies this for me? Let's say all of a sudden you have a knock on your door at 2 in the morning. There's a family there, a mother, father, and 2 kids. They're illegal immigrants, and they're asking you to hide them because ICE is coming to get them. What's your response to that?
I hand them over to ICE.
Okay, you would hand them over to ICE. Okay, right. How is that not different from the exact same narrative that was constructed during
First
Hitler's
of all,
reign of removing Jews from Germany?
Shame on you for comparing deportation efforts to
It
Auschwitz
started with
and
deportation.
the extermination
It
efforts.
started with deportation.
That is such a ridiculous.
No.
Not everything is
No.
the Holocaust. Not everything is Auschwitz. Let me tell you the core difference.
You're
Number
the one
one,
who brought in the Holocaust.
Number
here,
one,
I did not.
Number one,
I did not bring in that extreme. You're the one who's talking
you-
in extremes. I'm trying
no,
to have
you did bring
No.
up the extreme.
No.
You said how is it different? Who brought it up, me or him?
No. I was mentioning deportations. The Jews were deported first.
Allow me to tell you how it is different. They broke the law to come here, and we are enforcing the law.
The Jews broke the citizen laws before they were deported as well.
Hold on.
They were constitutionally committed there.
These laws have been on the books for well over 150 years that you cannot illegally enter the United States.
The Constitution can be amended and shifted.
In Weimar Germany, they created new, ridiculous, arbitrary, evil laws to go after another.
They were still the laws of the time.
These are old laws that are reapplied to our times. I wanted to ask one final question
Sure.
because I know you have to get to class.
Yeah, I do.
And you are a professor, right? What is a woman?
In all honesty and response, I mean, anyone who's biologically a woman that has the genitalia of a woman can be a mother. Okay.
Good.
So,
I'm glad to hear that.
I enjoyed this conversation. I very much appreciate it. But it's a little bit of a disappointment, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm not an ideologue. I would really like to step back and observe what is happening now, to read the times. And as a historian, my training is to look back at some period. It may be tunnel vision because my areas of expertise happens to be the interwar period, but I can't help but find similarities. And when I come ask you, what do you think about the similarities? Immediately you push me to the extreme. You're wanting to promote dialogue here, but when it comes to like asking an honest question, asking you to almost like provide a critical exposition of it, it's kind of like now it gets to the point that the conversation is
No, I mean, look,
down.
I'll be honest. Like, I asked you a very simple question about interwar period. You know what the Darnells is with Churchill, and so I don't take what you say that seriously.
My expertise has to do
But
with the policy of appeasement.
secondly, I reject the entire premise of just looking at everything through the interwar period, because what have they called Donald Trump since day one? They've called him Hitler, and they've called every one of us that wear these hats and these red hats Nazis. And it is so ridiculous, and it's so repulsive, and it's so insulting. Instead, as a historian, you should not just try to find similarities. You have an obligation to find differences. Say, how is Trump different than the interwar period? How is Trump different than Adolf Hitler? Can you tell me 3 ways he's different?
I can give you 100 ways in which he's different.
Okay, but then
A
you
different culture,
came up
different
here with just
environment.
the similarities.
Would you like me to have come up here and talked about all the similarities? Or I mean, is this conversation
Well, no,
supposed to be prove me wrong? And have a
Again,
conversation
yes,
about
they were both
Right.
men with XY chromosomes, and I mean, you could go through all the the similarities.
Right, and that's making a trite argument there.
But this is really important. Is that our current we are prisoners of the talking points of that everything bad is Hitler and everything bad is Nazi
I opened
Germany.
that way. I just despise.
No,
the,
but you're actively playing into it. Instead, as a historian, what you should be saying
you're not
is
even allowing me to ask the question.
allow me to finish. Instead, as a historian, what you should be saying is, I know this period than anybody else better. And I think it's ridiculous when people even get close to asking these questions.
Sure.
You are failing as a historian
Let me tell
not
you
to lead
there's
people
a big
towards
difference
that.
There. There's a big difference.
You are failing as a professor not to do that.
Because if a student walks into my
let me tell you
class-
why. I'm going to finish. Because all of a sudden it justifies violence and death threats against us because the left is propagandized by professors like you being told that we are Nazis all the time and they come after us.
I haven't called anyone here a Nazi whatsoever.
Everything
And
you have
if
said is
my
the
student-
embedded through line.
If my student walks into my class and starts pointing everything fascist, I provide that correction. You did point out this is my area of expertise, and you won't even allow me to ask the question and make the comparison.
No, we allowed you to do it, and then you said, here's all the similarities, and it's a great grave of
I
concern.
have not given one criticism to your character or to your intelligence. I've been up here and you've done it multiple times
Yeah,
to
but
me.
I'm
Just
not
to ask
taking
a
money
simple
from
question.
kids to go them study history at the University of Florida. I don't have a PhD, and you do. Okay, so the
Sure, but
incumbent,
that's an unfair
intellectual
assumption.
advantage is on you. You have a PhD. I do not. You have a moral obligation when kids go into debt into your class and when you have a public platform to lead them towards saying, actually, no, the people in media are misrepresenting this, and this isn't actually the rise of Nazi Germany. Instead, you're like, well, we should consider this, and the similarities are kind of eerily and chilling, which is complete
This is
nonsense.
my area of study. But I do have one thing, and I'll go ahead and I do appreciate your time. I do. I remember I did during the election night in November. I sat back and I was going through YouTube channels who was doing the coverage, and I actually enjoyed your coverage. And there was a point in which Trump won Pennsylvania that you got emotional, and you actually shed a tear or two. I wonder at one point, and that emotional response goes from felicity and joy of shedding a tear of this liberator to actually sorrow of seeing that this is going to get to the point where it could lead to oppression. And that's where my question was.
Do you know why I cried on election night?
Because you thought it was a restoration of the Judeo-Christian values that are inherent to the Constitution.
Let me tell you why, because I think you might appreciate this as a historian. Joe Biden sent the entire federal government after Turning Point USA and me personally. They wanted me in federal prison.
Right.
And by the way, that's what despots do, not
Sure.
Donald Trump. Let me finish. And so when Donald Trump won, it was a sigh of relief that maybe I won't have to go to federal prison.
Sure.
Maybe I can actually be around my kids. And maybe we can live in a free society.
Criticizing Trump does not mean I support Biden.
I never said you did, but you also should, and I want you to do this, I want you in your next class also say, well, here's all the similarities between Joe Biden and Adolf Hitler. And there's a lot, but I don't do that because I think it's intellectually sloppy, historically very dangerous, because not everything can be compared to the most evil person ever to live. In fact, maybe we should, as a society, reserve that and say, we're only going to use the Hitler reference very rarely, very sparingly. Putin is Hitler. Trump is Hitler. MAGA is Hitler. Instead, let's take a step back and say, no, this was a unique evil, a horror, and comparing everything to that period, not what you're doing, but you're getting close to it, cheapens the evil of that period.
Or focus on the comparison gets rid of the ideological rhetoric.
Or talk about the differences, not just the comparison, because the differences will de-radicalize the country.
If you and I were sitting down
not
having a
radicalize
beer,
it.
we would have talked about the differences and the
I'd
similarities.
be having a club soda,
With this
but that's fine,
environment
so.
here, I focus on the differences. So I appreciate
Thank you
the
very much.
conversation.
Have a good class. Thank you.
Hi, Charlie. Before we start, I want to say I'm a professor here at WSU, and
Well, thank you for no, don't boom. What do you teach?
fair enough. I'm a sociology professor. I actually teach environment and climate change. Don't worry, that's not my question. I have no desire to talk about that today. Before I start, though, I actually want to surprise you maybe a little bit and say that I appreciate that you're here. If nothing else, hold on. If nothing else, as someone who wants so badly to see our students engaged in politics and the life of the mind, this is great, and you should give yourselves a hand for showing up and be out here to talk about ideas. I do want to focus my question, if I can ask a question rather than doing this whole polemic thing, on the students that are here. So I've taught here for 6 years. I've gotten to know hundreds of our students. And every semester I ask them what they care about, what they want, what concerns them. And I think you probably know this, what scares them the most is that the day that they leave here and they go on the job market, they enter the labor pool, that they're not going to find a job. They're not going to find a job. They're going to have a hard time buying a home. They're not going to be able to afford to have a family. Do you agree with that? Do you all agree with that?
Well, largely. I mean, if they're studying sociology, they might not be able to find a job.
Well,
but I
fair enough. Yeah.
mean, you're kind of proving that college is not really a good use of time.
So for what it's
if
worth,
the students
Charlie-
you're talking to can't find jobs, why are they learning from you?
Sorry, for what it's worth, Charlie, I mostly don't teach sociology students. I mostly teach students from across campus who are interested in things like the environment and climate change. I teach very few sociology students. There's actually a lot of environmental science, engineering,
Even more
finance,
so, but
accounting.
yeah.
A lot of people with the kinds of degrees that you think are very valuable. Anyway, they remain concerned. What I would love to hear from you, genuinely, is what you believe the Trump administration has done in these first 4 months that is making the economic futures of these young people better.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been in office for 80 days, but quite a lot. Number one, the price of oil is already down, so it's easier for everyone here to be able to drive home. The gas is going to be cheaper, which also will lower inflation. Number two, a tax bill will hopefully pass, which is no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, largest middle-class tax cut in history.
Yeah.
So everyone here that's going to have a job where overtime is incorporated, they'll be able to keep more of their money. Number three, we're opening up federal lands to build more homes, which is a great thing because home ownership is way inaccessible for a lot of people in this audience. And it's going to take some time. And one of the main reasons why President Trump won is because we were able to move the youth vote rather significantly
Absolutely.
and substantially because the Democrat Party, A, took younger voters for granted. I think we can agree on that.
Absolutely.
And B, they did not have an optimistic, hopeful agenda for home ownership, for getting married and having children in this country. So I would like to see the Trump administration go even further and make it so that every young person in this country can have accessibility to be able to own a home. I think they should prohibit major funds like BlackRock from buying up private family homes so that we have to compete against them. And I'll just do another thing I'm privately lobbying for and publicly, because I'll say it here, is I don't think the Chinese Communist Party should be able to buy up farmland in the western part of the United States.
Absolutely.
And with that, single-family homes. So that's just some of the ideas here.
Sure. So can I respond? I actually agree with most of what you're saying. I'm not sure that opening up federal lands for housing is going to really solve our housing crisis. I'm not sure lowering the cost of gasoline is really going to deal with the other kinds of inflationary pressures that the Trump administration is putting on the economy, because you didn't really mention the most important thing that he's done, which is place massive tariffs on imports into the United States, which has caused retaliatory tariffs, which are putting economic pressures on American businesses. So it's not only actually jacking up the price, it's functionally a tax on all of us. We're all just going to pay extra for things that get imported. So there's inflation. But all of this conflict, the import, the cost of living going up, the pressure is being put on businesses, also means that the odds of a recession are also going up. By every estimate, not just academic economists, but economists from the government, as well as economists who are working in finance or in the private sector. How do you reconcile the increasing cost of living, the odds of a recession, with the idea that the Trump administration is making the economic futures of young people better?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I fully acknowledge that what we inherited from Joe Biden was no. I mean, of course, you inherit. You want me to prove to you how bad the economy was we inherited?
No, sorry, just
you can laugh and chuckle.
Real quick. I think that the problems facing the American economy are bipartisan. They've been caused by both parties over 40 years.
Hold on, let me prove to you how
That's
that's
not a
true.
Biden problem.
No,
It's not an Obama
Time out.
problem. It's a Bush and Biden and Obama problem.
No, hold on. Allow me to finish my point.
Go for it.
And the audience, your students, will teach you something. Is that okay?
I would love that.
Who had a stronger economy, Joe Biden or Donald Trump's first term? It's not so. So you could say it's a bipartisan problem, but when Donald Trump was president, blue-collar workers and young people saw their incomes rise faster than the 1%. When Joe Biden was president, the wealthy got wealthier than any other time in American history. We saw the 1% explode their asset class, and young people and workers had a tougher time. As far as tariffs go, we're still very, let's just say, new into this rather risky experiment that the American people voted for. It could raise prices, or it could end up being where we strike really good trade deals and we sell more of our own products to these countries. And tariffs are a forcing function to open up markets. But I think it's actually really promising that a president is willing to risk even his own political favorability to do something that every other politician has promised, which is to protect the American worker. I really think that's political courage in spades. But I could address the other points, but if you'd like to interject.
You're right. Like it's risky, and I think that's an excellent way to frame it. So I guess my follow-up question is, what's the theory behind how this will work, and how long do we need to wait until we give up on the experiment?
Well, first and foremost, we don't know whether, so when you are the incumbent economic player, tariffs can help you. The entire world would love to be a consumer economy. We are a consumer economy. But if you are only a consumer economy, that comes with some problems. We don't make vitamin C in this country. It's all made in China. No, it's a real thing. You literally can't survive without vitamin C. Our antibiotics are made in China. You can laugh all you want. Our pharmaceutical materials, our aluminum, our iron, our rare earth minerals. We can't make a drone without at least half the components or parts made in mainland China. That's a national security problem. Yeah. And so by using prudence, which is, of course, one of the highest of all the virtues, President Trump is able to weigh the costs and the benefits while also asking the most important question. Am I going to be able to have America not be a vassal state to the Chinese Communist Party while also improving the well-being of the people who voted for me, and not just people who voted for me, but every American person, every American citizen? Finally, if tariffs are nothing but downsides, why does China use them? There are some upsides potentially to tariffs, to protect some industries or to incentivize domestic production. Yeah. And finally, I think I want to double down and reiterate this point, which is that the people in this audience that voted for President Trump were trying to send a message to their leaders that you haven't listened to us. The experts have gotten so much wrong. You guys stole prom away from us. You stole graduation away from us. You guys from the COVID lockdowns. And it's time for us to try something new. I'm simply just...
That's great. I don't know what that has to do with the question that I asked, which was about the use of tariffs. I don't know what that has to do with prom.
Well, hold on. But
no. You're redirecting the question. I want to talk to you about the tariffs.
Can I tell you what it has to do with tariffs, actually? Because I'll complete the point. Because you have a PhD and I didn't go to college, so let me maybe make sense it for you, okay? But I was saying, what it has to do with tariffs is that they don't trust what the experts have been saying, because the experts locked down this generation and unnecessarily masked them for 2 years. So when the experts say tariffs don't work, excuse us when we say, actually, you have completely invalidated all of your predictions the last couple of years. Do you see how they connect?
Well, I see how that connects to how people think about tariffs. I think that's different than what tariffs actually do.
Well,
and it's perfectly fine to be frustrated.
That's what they do.
Now you let me talk.
Well, hold on.
You let me talk.
Well,
you keep telling me not to interrupt you. I'm not interrupting you.
That's what you think they do. I'm going to add some context to what you're saying. However, we have not yet done an experiment of tariffs as the incumbent economic superpower when we have mass robotics, artificial intelligence, we are energy independent, and our greatest adversary is energy dependent. So you don't know what's going to happen, and the American people voted for the experiment.
Well, then let me redirect you back to the question that I asked you and that you didn't answer. So it's an experiment. It's risky. These are your words. These are the words you have used. Yeah. How long do we have to wait? And when do we know that they've worked? Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? Is it 4 years from now? Prices are still up.
Well, prices are not going
up. Hiring
is going down.
No. Inflation is not going to go down.
But it already is, though.
You've put a tax. You've increased the cost of something. That's what the tariff does, Charlie.
So, Doctor, what's your
Bugden.
name? Buddington? Bugden. Dr. Bugden. How does one avoid a tariff?
Do you mean like how do we not impose tariffs intentionally on ourselves?
But let's educate the audience. If you're Toyota, how do you avoid a tariff?
In the current climate, you would build cars here, which Toyota does. Toyota invests $1 billion a year.
Trillions of dollars are coming into the United States thanks to tariffs. Trillions of dollars. NVIDIA pledged $500 billion.
Those have nothing to do with the tariffs. Those were pre-existing agreements.
Toyota just announced 10 new plants in Indiana and Ohio because of the tariffs.
Okay,
Hyundai the same.
How long do we wait? How long until they build those plants? Is it next year? Is it 5 years? Is it 6 years?
They've announced it. They're going to break ground soon. However, I think the more operative question that you're asking is that if something doesn't work, President Trump will not follow it blindly because he's not an ideologue on this. You can laugh and you can kind of shrug your shoulders. In fact, he's a patriot. Unlike the prior president, he actually cares about the well-being of the American people. And so if what he is doing with tariffs start to have overwhelming evidence that it's not working for the American people, then he will pivot or adjust. But let me tell you the other component. We're about to pass a massive tax bill in conjunction with the tariff strategy that will make us the most desirable market on the planet to do business. The American worker is about to take more money home than they ever have in the last 50 years. Again, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. We're going to have a massive middle-class tax cut, an expanded child tax credit, things that the Democrats and Joe Biden refuse to do. President Trump is going to deliver in massive numbers. So I would like to say, despite what the experts say, oh, there's a recession coming, it might be true, but again, this is the same expert class that has completely lost any credibility with the American people the last couple of years. President Trump's been in office for 80 days. Remember when everyone was complaining about the price of eggs? Well, the price of eggs has gone down. The price of oil has gone down dramatically, like $20 a barrel. Give President Trump some time. And by the way, it only took him 10 days to solve the border crisis. Turns out we did not need a border bill. We just needed a new president to secure the southern border.
For what it's worth, I haven't had lunch, so I'm going to leave and let the next person talk. Sure. I just want to say, I do want to reiterate my point, and just for you to reflect on and for everyone here to reflect on. It is a risk, and the president has taken an enormous gamble, not with some abstract thing called the economy. It's your future. It's your jobs. It's your ability to get hired. It's the ability to buy a house and have kids.
No, you know who took the biggest? I got to interject.
And all you need to do, all that anyone should really bother doing, is not to fight about it, but to just pay attention to what actually happens and to reflect on whether what Charlie said is true. That this president is actually a patriot and is actually adapting and is actually doing things to make your life better. Okay? It's good to talk to you, Charlie.
They voted for him for a reason, because they saw his first term and how well he did and how Joe Biden destroyed the country intentionally. Thank you, doctor, and I wish you well.
Marvelous. Thank you. A very, very short question. Israel versus Hamas. Good guy versus bad guy. Russia versus Ukraine. Who's the good guy and who's the bad guy?
Both are bad. One is worse.
Which way round?
Russia is worse than Ukraine.
Okay, so why haven't we pursued that?
What do you mean?
Well, it seems to me that in the whole of the current US proposition, that Ukraine is being the bad guy.
In what way? We funded Ukraine upwards to $200 billion.
Absolutely. But
We just signed a mineral deal with Ukraine, not Russia.
Yeah, but you are expecting Ukraine to give up 20% of its territory to someone who invaded it.
Well, is Crimea part of Russia or Ukraine?
Ukraine.
That's where we don't agree.
Well, I'm afraid that's part of international treaty. That's not up for grabs.
Well, it's interesting. I mean,
that's
hold on. I mean, even Zelensky has said he's willing to give up Ukraine.
No. America signed the agreement that gave Ukraine Crimea.
Right.
When the Soviet Union ended.
Right. It was done. First of all, it never should have been done. It was largely ceremonial.
No.
But however, it was
shouldn't have
annexed
been,
under
it was
Obama.
done.
Yes, and it was a mistake. And it should be given back to Russia as a sign of good gesture to end this conflict.
Okay.
Who's currently controlling Crimea? Where was the Russian Navy headquartered in World War II? Where was the end of World War II signed? This is very important.
I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying that if we're being logical on what has happened, that you are now arguing against that flow. And I don't understand it. Because actually, why is Ukraine the bad guy?
No, I said they're bad. They're not the bad guy.
Yeah, well, you said they were both bad, but one was more bad.
Correct, yes.
So why is Ukraine bad?
Well, there's a lot wrong with Ukraine. First of all, they're not a democracy. Zelensky refuses to hold an election.
Well, no, he can't hold an election.
Oh, wait, did Churchill hold an election during the war?
Because under his constitution...
Hold on, Lincoln held an election during the war. That's not true. He can call an election. He can call a snap election. He's full dictator of the country.
No.
Because he knows that the people of Ukraine would kick him out immediately because he's deeply unpopular. In fact, if he wanted to show a statement to the world, he would call an election and win by 80% and say, see, I'm super popular. So that's number one. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with a person being propped up as a government we're sending $200 billion to that refuses even to face his voters.
Okay, I can't agree with you factually on that at all.
Okay.
I mean, constitutionally, Ukraine is not able to hold an election because it's under military law at the moment, and that's just a matter of fact.
Again, he can, as a prime minister or president, he could do whatever he wants.
He can't.
Okay, all right, we're going to
He
just go back
can't
and
sign an
forth with each
executive order and change their constitution.
Okay.
Neither can the American president either, so
Okay.
hopefully there's a bit of...
He could even do a ceremonial election to see where he actually stands with the
I
people.
think we call those opinion polls.
Yes, and they're very negative.
Firmly ahead in the opinion.
Again, but you would agree that a person that holds on to power without the election of the sovereign is pretty questionable.
No, not in those circumstances.
Okay, then we disagree.
No, okay, that's fine. That's fine. But give me another reason why you...
They are the most corrupt country in Europe that never even met the most remote standards of joining NATO. Do not know where a lot of this money is going.
I don't disagree that there is a problem with corruption, but the most corrupt country in Europe, are you sure about that?
I'd have to think, I'd have to double or triple think about that, but they're very corrupt.
Okay, so it's a little bit doubtful. It's not absolute.
Well, I mean, well,
There's plenty of corruption around. I mean, let's face it, we are talking about comparison with some of the states you're doing business with in the Gulf.
Oh, of course, but we're not giving them money, they're giving us money. That's a difference, right? Saudi Arabia
Oh, so it's fine.
Well, hold on a second.
It's morally acceptable to take money from corrupt people.
Well, hold on. First of all, as far as morally acceptable, you do what's best in the benefit of your country. And so, for example, we were allied with Russia during the Second World War, and I'm glad we were. And I would ask you,
Don't forget.
How much money is too much money to send to Ukraine? We're at 200 billion right now.
I don't think you have to send any more money to Ukraine.
We agree.
I think you have to agree to support them as a free country and perhaps sell them weapons, like you're very happy to sell weapons to less free countries. And I think Europe will pick up the slack, as we ought to. And I don't disagree with some of the comments about Europe not looking after its own security. I just don't get this approach, which was supposedly to end the war quickly, which now seems to be elongating it, and in doing so, throwing up a smokescreen of very variable facts, if they are facts at all, about how things occurred, which actually isn't helping things. And if people can't see that Putin is stalling, I'm just...
I agree with you. I think he might be stalling.
And therefore, and I think even your president has acknowledged the fact that he thinks he might be stalling.
That's correct. So we don't have a disagreement there.
No, we don't. No,
we just have a disagreement about the efficacy of tactics. And we don't know. And I'm willing to say we could be wrong.
No. Oh, well...
Of course you could be wrong in life.
Yeah.
I mean,
we could all be wrong. But actually bringing that war to an end consistently actually isn't going very well. And I would just suggest to you that whatever tactics have been used are perhaps not the best. And they are certainly inconsistent with what's going on in the Middle East and how America has been treating parties in the Middle East. But I've had enough of your time.
Fair. No, that's a fair contention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great to be back in Oxford. I suppose I really owe actually a debt of thanks to our friend Mr. Kirk here because, I love to think that my students would wait this long to hear me lecture. But to be honest with you, you've been here this long just because of him. But I must caution you, entertainment is on this side for you. Education is on this side. Now, I gotta mention one thing that has been a sort of running current through the argument that you've heard from opposition today, which is this idea of, he won. He got the popular vote once. He got the popular vote once. He did win twice, okay? But the assumption is that he therefore had a mandate. A lot of political scientists dispute that there's even such a thing as an electoral mandate, that people could actually take him at his word and that somehow Elon Musk was elected too. So you know what happens when you make assumptions, right? And I hate to use a democratic dig here because it's got that connotation, but you make an ass of yourself. That's what happens when you make an assumption. Everyone knows that. Now, the word unprecedented is intrinsically associated almost to redundancy when it comes to Donald Trump. He is not unprecedented in being the first. He's definitely not the first president to try and push the boundaries of executive power to beyond its scope. He is even not the first president to do so in a time that is out of sync with his context. I can think of two other examples. Andrew Johnson, after the Civil War, he was America's first president to be impeached. Why? Because he wanted to welcome the Confederate rebels back with open arms, like the Civil War, just a bit of a brotherly scuffle, wasn't it? No problem. Oh, all these freed African Americans? No, let's not have any more civil rights for them. No. So he got impeached. He wasn't removed, but he was the first president to be impeached. Richard Nixon, here's another example of a man acting out of the context of what was acceptable in his times. No, he wasn't impeached because he was forced to resign. He lost the support of his own Republican Party. So what is the difference when it comes to Donald Trump, a president who's been impeached twice and not removed? He's not being held accountable. He's pushing against this for more executive power. It is not acceptable in the 21st century, but so far he is yet to be held to account. No, thank you. Presidents have formal powers and informal powers, but one of the key ones is, of course, executive orders. We've already heard it tonight. But I would just like to point out that there was a little bit of fake news over there, okay? So let me get the numbers straight. In his first 100 days, which is why we're here in the first place, Donald Trump signed no less than 147 executive orders. Now, to put that in context, Joe Biden signed a similar number. That's what you heard. But over 4 years, not 100 days. Big difference. So Donald Trump has brought up the yearly average executive orders since 1944, all the way through the modern presidency, since FDR. Now, he has also used his pardon power, his clemency power, another formal power. Most controversially, in his first 100 days, we already mentioned the pardoning of 1,500 January 6 rioters. Hugely controversial and a huge push in the use of executive power. He is the commander-in-chief, another immensely important formal power. What is he using it for? Well, so far, thank goodness, he's only organizing himself a birthday military parade. And how much is this going to cost, you ask? Well, The Guardian suggests it could cost up to $45 million American dollars for the American taxpayer to pay. Does this sound like the leader of the Western democracy, what they would do? He likes to create crises. Now, we all know that when there's a crisis, for example, he was in charge when there was COVID, when there was a crisis with Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, an economic crisis related to COVID, how badly he mishandled and mismanaged that. Why does he like to therefore create crises? Because he can control them. It's this idea of controlling. Andrew Jackson, a president he most admires, used to use the phrase, "I am the storm." That's the idea. It's like he wants to be the storm. He wants to control the narrative and create these crises. To establish himself as more powerful. Pushing back against traditional allies. Can I think of an example? Too many, but I'll give you a couple. Recently, he's got really keen on this idea of an Iran nuclear treaty. Wow, I feel like I'm in 2015 again. Wait, we had one of those. Oh yeah, it was under President Barack Obama. And yet, because it was associated with Obama, it became no more under Trump. And now he's trying to create a treaty with no trust whatsoever. He talked in his election about the Panama Canal. And most egregiously recently, in terms of the economy, his tariff wars, going after America's, one of their oldest and strongest allies, Canada. Why? Fentanyl. It's racing across the border. We got to stop it. It's dangerous. How much fentanyl comes across the Canadian-US border? 0.01%. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Less than 0.01% comes across the US-Canadian border. And of course, I would be remiss to talk about Donald Trump if not to talk about immigration and his deportation policies. From the start of his political career, a mere 10 years ago, his immigration rhetoric rested on xenophobia and racism. And I'm not going to dignify this chamber by repeating some of it. What it has created is it has encouraged some of the worst of Americans and statements to come out, to feel vindicated. For example, in American campuses today, after his re-election 2024, some Republican student groups were actually encouraging their fellow students to report other students they believed to be there illegally. So you are now innocent, no longer innocent before proven guilty. He has been told by the Supreme Court, his own Supreme Court, one might say, considering that he appointed 3 of the justices, that he must return a man who should not have been deported to El Salvador's max security prison. He must return him, and he refuses to do it. The president has enforcement. He is utilizing this power to an extreme extent. Like this, he is mirroring Jackson. Jackson is the one who 200 years ago, almost 200 years ago in 1832, the Supreme Court said, no, Cherokees, Native Americans must be able to stay on their land. They said this to someone who had driven through the Indian Removal Act of 1830. And Andrew Jackson ignored it. Why? Because he was living in the democracy of the white man. That was almost 200 years ago. Thank God we no longer live in the democracy of the man, although I do notice a bit of a gender divide here, which may reflect the support that Donald Trump has and that gender divide of his own. Another really interesting thing I find about Donald Trump and his use of power and deportation and immigration policies creating the crisis, he seems to be really fixated on a potential genocide in South Africa against white South Africans. Nobody else has really heard of this. And yet, white South Africans, no thank you, you'll get your chance, Mr. Kirk. Like my students, they get their chance. So, these white South Africans are able to come and relocate to the United States, while others, including those of minority, racial, and ethnic backgrounds, do not get that privileged opportunity, the same privileged opportunity. Finally, I'd be remiss without mentioning Doge, of course. I mentioned before Elon Musk. I mentioned before how he was unelected. Getting hand cramp there, Mr. Kirk. Lots of notes. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. So, when it comes to Doge, we know that he is not the first president to try and reorganize and restructure the American government. William Taft there, 1909, 1913, he did it from a fashion of organizing, of steadying it, of specialism. This was a period in which Congress and he got together while he used unilateral power, got together and worked together to ensure that they had someone who was a specialist in government to steady it for almost 4 years before slashing. There was no chainsaw government. It was streamlining government, and it certainly wasn't denigrating those very unflashy civil service jobs that people do tirelessly day in and day out, and mostly thanklessly as well. So ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, in my final 20 seconds, how do we judge whether a president has gone too far when the method that the founders gave us, the high crimes and misdemeanor, the last block of check, the impeachment mechanism, seems meaningless for a man who has been impeached twice? How do we hold him to account? Well, by the only means that we know how and that we've spearheaded. We must vote. We must vote in proposition. We must vote by democratic means to prove that Donald Trump has gone too far. Thank you very much.
I thank Laura for her fine speech. And now closing the case for the opposition and indeed the whole debate, Mr. Charlie Kirk.
Got my timer? Okay, before I begin my prepared remarks, I feel like I gotta run the gauntlet. First, I'll give you £1,000 right now if you could tell me the US citizen that was deported under Donald Trump. You said that twice. Yeah, the US citizen that was deported under Donald Trump. Can anyone tell me? £1,000, I'll give it to you right now. Yeah, name? Wrong, not a US citizen. Citizen of El Salvador. Anyone else? US citizen, deported under Trump. Nope, that was a lie. You should know better than that. You go to Oxford, so that is a correction. Number two, can you tell me when it comes to Charlottesville, something that you said when Donald Trump said that there were people on both sides, he was actually talking about the statue debate, not what you said, so that's a hoax. That's line number two. Oh yeah, you said that somebody over here said something about Pete Hegseth being nothing more than a TV host. You should also mention that he was a service member of the military. Nope, sorry, I'm going to talk uninterruptedly. Thank you. Service member and was a decorated war hero. Funny you didn't mention that. Oh yes, January 6th came up multiple times from, you tried your best, but from you and from the opposition. It's not an insurrection. You called them all rioters. It's funny. A small percentage of the people that were actually there on January 6th did anything violently. The vast majority walked into the Capitol building after they were invited. Also, back to your point, I certainly hope Reform and AFD wins. So I hope that it's not to teach Trump a lesson that he goes too far. We'll get to that in a second. Finally, the Donald Duck, really, like, what was that all about? What is this jar? I have no idea what you're talking about in the back of the room. It's like, it's completely lost on me. So I don't know what that's all about. Also, on the Canadian border, the professor failed to mention that the Canadian border was closed. President Trump said fentanyl, and the amount of terrorists that are coming across the Canadian border, of which the most terrorists that come into America come across the Canadian border on the terrorist watch list. You did not mention that. And finally, Professor, you never heard of it in South Africa. Interesting. You never heard of that. The fact that a major political party in South Africa says, quote, kill the Boers, kill the Boers. I would expect more of somebody who wrote a dissertation and teaches here at Oxford to say that you would not know about the attempted slaughter and genocide of white South Africans. Okay, now on to, I'm sure there's lots of POIs, and I will talk uninterrupted. Now to my remarks, but actually, is that all of it? Let me see here. Yeah, that's just a taste. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here tonight. Thank you to the Oxford Union for inviting me. I never went to university. I take that as a great compliment. So therefore, everyone who went to university should be able to run circles around me. You'll be the judge, but I'll do my best. Has Donald Trump gone too far? Well, I can nitpick at how vague that question is. What is too far exactly? Are his tweets too long? Can all of us even agree on what we're aiming at? I don't think so. The truth is this. If you dislike the West, and if you hate the West's values, if you think the West is evil fundamentally and deserves to be destroyed, then anything Donald Trump does basically short of surrender will be too far for you. If I was visiting this school 100 years ago, speaking in support of an American president, I think we would at least have some broad agreement on what a country's leader should be trying to do. But we don't anymore. I don't think it's because America's changed. In fact, I think it's because Britain has changed. From my perspective, Britain is one of the greatest countries in the history of the world. You were the country of Shakespeare, the steam engine, and Adam Smith. You defeated Napoleon, you destroyed the slave trade, you stood up to Hitler. My country, America, became great as it is because of what we inherited from you, from Britain. When I hear the slogan, "Make America Great Again," I'm also hearing, quote, "Return America to its British roots." Great Britain has everything in the world to be proud of. But when I look at Britain today, I see a country where the ruling elites are in a race to abandon the very values, the values that made them so great in the first place. I wish I could blame this all on labor, all on the left, but I can't. This country just had its 14th uninterrupted year of so-called conservative rule. And what did they conserve exactly? Well, they didn't conserve the ancient British rights to freedom of speech. In Britain today, 30 people a day are arrested for offensive posts on social media, according to The Telegraph. Praying silently within 600 feet of an abortion clinic can get you arrested in Scotland, as a 74-year-old woman named Rose just learned weeks ago. Members of Parliament scold British citizens for thinking they have the right to say that they do not have the right to say things that offend Muslims. 14 years of conservative rule didn't conserve British prosperity. Adjusted for inflation cost of living, the average British worker makes less today than they did in 2008. Outside of London, the British have lower incomes than every one of America's 50 states, and it never used to be this way. British industry pays 4 times as much for electricity as America does. You have the highest electricity rates in the world, a consequence of a choice of going net neutral. Nothing will kill a modern economy faster than high energy prices. And the country that invented the steam engine now has some of the highest energy prices on the planet. But above all, 14 years of conservative control didn't preserve the British nation. This country's conservatives thought it was their moral duty to allow anyone from the third world to move here. They didn't need to hold Western values. They didn't need to have useful skills. They could go on welfare immediately. Just last week, Keir Starmer announced he's changing the law to make sure immigrants who commit crimes are deported, because the conservatives never actually bothered passing that law themselves. The dying out of the British nation means the dying out of Christianity. Britain is the birthplace of Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, Anglicans, Quakers, and more. I would guess that more Christian denominations trace back to Britain than any other country. But soon, Britain will have more practicing Muslims than practicing Christians. I think that will be a catastrophic change, and everyone knows it. That's why it's only Muslims moving to Christian countries, never the other way around. I don't want America to go the way of Britain. I want us to remain free. I want us to remain rich and innovative. I want us to remain Christian. I don't want Americans to be replaced. But forget what I want. This is what the American people want. And in a democracy, the people are supposed to get what they want. The very same people that lecture us about democracy have a lot of problems with the consequences of democracy when the people vote a way that they don't like. And that's where Donald Trump comes in. When I was growing up, people would say that Britain was where America would be 10 or 20 years in the future. What they meant was that Britain was more left-wing than America, but we'd catch up eventually. That's just how things were over time, and nothing could stop it. I don't hear people saying that anymore. Donald Trump is the reason why. Almost alone, Donald Trump has changed the course of history. He's destroyed the assumption that the left's victory was inevitable. Under President Biden, more than 10 million illegal aliens entered America. Guides were published on TikTok explaining how to break into America. Say some magic words at the border, and nobody would stop you. Entire neighborhoods of American cities were turned over to migrants living on the dole. America was treated as a pile of wealth for the rest of the planet to plunder at will. Now that is all stopping. President Trump has cut border crossings, not 90%, not 99%, but 99.9%. For years, my country's leaders lied that the southern border was an unfixable mess. President Trump exposed them all as liars within weeks. But closing the door didn't fix the damage that Biden did. We have well over 10 million people in America who should not be in America. If somebody breaks into your home, you don't fix the problem by closing your door and locking it. Things aren't fixed until the burglar is kicked out. And President Trump has been fighting harder than ever to make that happen. But I'd be happy if we fought even harder. Of course, illegal migration isn't the only threat facing America. In Joe Biden's America, we had the tyranny of DEI. Even though America's Constitution explicitly forbids racial discrimination, our government ordered people to do it anyway. People were denied jobs and denied promotions. Kids were shut out of universities based on the color of their skin rather than their ability. Companies were denied federal contracts because their owners didn't look a certain way. People who didn't discriminate enough in hiring could be sued by the government. Every company in America lived in fear of their government deciding to target them for offenses against DEI. Trump has ordered DEI to be torn down, but I want him to tear it down faster. I want every university told that they're losing all federal dollars immediately if they don't stop racial discrimination. I want the Department of Justice to start auditing every federal contractor to find DEI and shut off contracts immediately wherever we find it. This is a kind of cancer that cannot be phased out. It must be ripped out from the core. The same goes for the toxic social contagion of transgenderism. In Joe Biden's America, public schools and medical organizations were co-opted into endorsing this insanity. They urged children just 10 years old or younger to take barely tested hormones and surgically alter their bodies. In some of America's liberal states, a parent who objects to their child's transition can lose custody. I've met detransitioners who escaped from this social poison. They tell me that getting sucked into the first place was the greatest mistake of their lives. President Trump has taken steps to stop promoting this lunacy. He's acted to protect women's sports, another POI I meant to make. She said it's only a couple dozen. 890 biological men have stolen awards, trophies, and championships from women in America. It's not a couple dozen. Over 890 women were displaced by pervert men. That's why I want Donald Trump's administration and why I support it. It's mostly what I've gotten, but I want more of it. I'll be honest. We, the American people, we want more deportations. We want more peace deals. We want more woke colleges defunded. We want more DEI parasites to lose their jobs. The American people voted to put America first. And you know what? You should all too. This is my final point. Do I have to stop? Okay. I mean, you should want to, no, it's fine. I don't know the rules. It's fine. You should want to preserve and restore the greatness of Britain. You should want the decline to stop, and you can make it happen. Starmer wouldn't be saying any of what he's saying without what President Trump is doing. If you were honest with yourself, if you want a great Britain again, not a mediocre Britain, if you want a Britain that you could be proud of, you should all be wearing MAGA hats and cheering Donald Trump on every step of the way. Thank you very much.